This video is just going to go over some basic techniques for handling constraints related to characters picking up objects. This can also be used for even just like grabbing other objects in the world as well. But in this demo, I'm going to be kind of talking more about the ability to pick something up, drop it, let it go, or throw it, or whatever you need it to do. There is definitely more complex ways you can do these kind of constraints, and they're going to give you more options. Anything like this with animation, your project is going to require different needs. So we're going to go over some basics, but hopefully that'll give you an idea of how you can kind of use this stuff. We'll start off with the most basic version of any sort of constraint with an object and a character, and that is just going to be a single hand grab of another object. So I'm going to get this hand here to pick up the ball and maybe drop it off to the side here. 99% of the time when you're doing any sort of interaction with the world with the arms, just like how our feet want to stay on the ground, we want to use IK for the character rig. So I've switched my character here to IK, which is our inverse kinematics, which means I can move the arm around, right? So I can move where the wrist is in the world and the arm reacts accordingly. The reason we don't want to use FK is it can be harder to line up the hand to where it's got to attach, and it also just a lot easier to move around with the object in its hand. You'll pretty much 100% need it if you have the two-handed grab, which we'll cover in the second half of this video. So let's go through this basic version. Now, when we do a single hand, we kind of get the ability to actually have the hand be the controller, right? Wherever we move the hand, the object can come with us. So let's do it in that direction. So what we want to do is, just for the sake of it, let's set a keyframe. I'm just going to hit S on my hand controller here. We can see in our channel box that there's been a key, and I'm going to do just a real shoddy animation here just to kind of go through it. And I'm going to just move it to a position where it would be grabbing. So let's just have it here. Obviously, you would do this way better and you'd have all nice finger control and all that, but let's just go through the process. And then where I'm grabbing it, so I'm kind of saying I go from there, it hits that position, now this is where it should attach. So how I always like to do this is don't make the constraint when it's not attached, find this position, and then you can start your constraint process. So at this position, let's go through that. So I'm going to now find my constrain buttons, which are going to be at the top here, and we've got constrain. I can only see this if I'm in animation, by the way. So if you're not seeing constrain here, just check yours isn't on modeling, because we need to be in animation, or even rigging as well has constrain there, but whatever works for you. So with constrain, we're looking for parent here. The reason we want to use parent is that just means that we get our move and our rotates, which we kind of want, right? Lets us rotate the wrist around, move it wherever we need in the world, and it's going to follow. Which order we select our objects here is going to be important as well. Whatever helps you remember the order. I always remember it master slave for whatever reason. I think that's how I was taught. So that means we want to click on the master first, the one that is going to be the thing we move around, and then the slave, or the thing that gets moved by that master controller, is a second selection. So in our case, it's the wrist is the master. So let's grab that and then shift click on the object we want to pick up. So that's the ball here. And I haven't named it, it's just P-Sphere 1 at the moment. Cool. So with that done, now we can do our constraint. So constrain and parent, you might want to hit this box and just check that there's a few things. The biggest one that'll change anything here is maintain offset. We do want that because otherwise it's going to move the ball exactly where the position of our controller is. So we're going to just leave that ticked. Sometimes it can turn off, so just check that first. Either go add, or you can even close and just hit it here again, just parent. So I'm going to click that. And now kind of looks like nothing's happened, but what we should find is if I move this wrist around, we're now grabbing the ball. Now, one thing to be aware of here though is because we've constrained it there and nothing has been keyframed yet really around that constraint, if I go back to frame 0, suddenly we're picking up the ball already, which we didn't want, right? We wanted to put the hand down and then grab the ball here. So we just have to be aware of how these constraints work, and how we control them to do what we kind of want. You could go forward here and animate like the rest of the move if we want, but let's try to make sure that we're not picking it up until here. What we need to do is find the constraint, or find the object that is being constrained. So in our case, it's the ball. And what you'll notice when you click on this is that it's different. We've got some blue here. So that means that these values here are being controlled by something else, which is our parent constraint, right? And so those are now just getting all their values from wherever the wrist is in the world. Now we're missing one thing here that we actually want to see, and that's the ability to turn our constraint on and off essentially. There is another way down here, but I find it's a lot easier to do it with the one that pops up just below here. Now the way we get that to pop up is we want to keyframe this. It actually is important that we keyframe these objects even when they're constrained as well, because what can happen is if we don't keyframe it and we drop it off like over here somewhere, it will just swing back to exactly where it was before as well. So it's kind of a tricky concept to understand that there's like keyframes that are still being processed underneath the constraint when it's on. But let's see how that looks. So just at frame 10, because that's when I know the connection is going to happen, I'm going to hit S. So just on my ball, hit S. You'll notice all the ones that are being constrained, all the values here, they have all turned green. And that's just because they're keyframed, and also they kind of have two connections, right? That's kind of the idea, right? It's the keyframe as well as the constraint. The other ones have just given themselves keyframes, and this little guy popped up, blend parent 1. Because it's just a keyframe, it kind of looks funny. It actually straight up breaks it here. It kind of defaults to this 0 value, and you'll see now my hand doesn't pick the ball up. So what I want to do is animate that little thing we saw, the blend parent 1. So this is our kind of turn on and off essentially. So this is, yes, I'm attached, I'm grabbed, and 0 is, no, I'm not, I've been placed. So we want this to actually be 1 at frame 10. So let's do that. Let's go here, 1. That now means if I set this in, so maybe I could turn auto key just so that happens in the future. I'm just going to hit S again just to set it in. Now if I go back, it's back to being that problem where it just grabs the whole time. So all we need to do is frame 9. We can go to here and write 0. Because I got auto keyframe now, it's just set that into red straight away. And we have the first step, which is excellent. Now after this, we can go back here. We can do some more excellent animation. Go up like that. And we'll go across and place the ball here. That's the idea. So if we watch that back, what we've got, hand goes down, not attached, grabs the ball, picks it up, it's constrained. So when it's in the air here, we've got that blend parent to be 1 the whole time. It means anything we do here, rotate it, twist it, move it, everything should follow along. And then we get to this point, and we just have to do the opposite, right, of what we just did. So on the ball here, we just want to do an S, set this position in. Like I said, this is that thing of the position. If I just undo this, it slings back to that original spot. So I really want to hit S first, set it in. Next frame, I'm going to go here and then go 0, and might as well just do an S to set in that position. And that means now I can go back here and make another point. And we now have simplest little lift and place animation that we could ever want. Cool. Next up, let's look at using both hands to grab an object or pick one up and move it around. Now this gets a little more complicated because we need the object to look like it's being held by both. So if something tilts, one hand might go down, the other hand might go up. And what that means is we actually kind of have to reverse the constraint hierarchy to what we just did with the simple one-handed one. We want the box here, or whatever we're grabbing, to actually be controlling both the hands. And that way it's actually more to do with the movement of the box that then corrects the arms so that everything stays in place and kind of looks like it's actually being held. Now, just going through that idea that every project is different. You know, there is a world where you can just do the same thing we just did, right? We could do our constrained parent and just have this hand be the one that lifts the box. And if you're just showcasing your animation from one angle, you know, we could definitely just do this and then animate this one, just keyframe animations behind it, and we'd probably get away with it. But we want something a little cooler here. We want to look like these are both actually holding on to what we have, which is our little box here. So let's just start with that sort of idea, and then I'll show you an even more complex part after that, which is really, really cool because it's going to free up more animation for you to do. So we want to take this box, and if we remember our little hierarchy when we do our constraints, it's master then slave. So we want to grab this, the box here, and we want to make it the master. So we click it first, then we click one of the hands and we go constrain parent. That means now if I move this box around, that arm stays attached to the side of the box, which is kind of cool. Now we just have to do the other one, same thing. So grab that, grab our wrist, and if you've used Maya before, you'll know G is repeat last. So I can just hit G, and that does the same function. So it's just doing another parent constraint for me. And what we should see is kind of cool. It literally is just the box is now the parent. It's going to let us move around these objects. Well, the hands are the objects. The object we're moving around, and it controls where the hands are going to go. So it's kind of fun to play around with. You know, this can be like a two-handed weapon or something as well, whatever you kind of need to work with. It is really kind of quick and easy. Now, the biggest downside of this is that we can't change where the hands are on this, right? Because this is controlling where the hands go. There is kind of a method here where we could unblend the parent, but the biggest problem here is when we blend the parent again, the offset is kind of locked in. So let's just quickly showcase that just so we understand what I mean. Just like we've done before, you know, we could absolutely just do a keyframe here, and we can see everything kind of moves. What we need to understand now, though, is that the hands also have that keyframe ability, but it's kind of what we had with the ball before. So if I was to just put a keyframe here, we get that whole green thing, we get the blend parent suddenly being available. So we might want to chuck that on so it is attached. But what if, just for whatever reason, we want to unattach it between these points? So let's put another keyframe at the top, one in the middle here. We're actually going to take off to 0. So I'm going to do it at... we'll do it straight afterwards. So 7, and we'll take it to 0. And then what we'll see here is it's going to actually blend back to the other one. So just before we get to the top, I'm also going to do, so 13, I'm going to do 0 here as well. So the idea is that, I never set that one in. Sorry. 0 and enter. So now in between these points, we have no actual connection, but there is still keyframes underneath. So it is kind of going how we want it to. But what it means is now I could freely through here, kind of take it off and place it again. The downside though, is what if I wanted it just before we attach it on again to have moved, right? Grab it up the top here instead. That's never going to work, because as soon as we blend the parent, no matter where it is in the world, it goes back to that position there, which is a little bit annoying. Again, there's other ways to do offsets here. I find the best way to do it is you just need to introduce like more controllers, right? And this is something you almost always want with rigs. Even the idea here that I'm just straight up, constraining a crucial part of the rig here, which is the wrist, that can be a little bit dirty if I need to use this wrist a lot more later in the animation. If I'm doing a longer animation, that might not be the best answer as well. So kind of how I would approach it is to just place little controllers in between this. So we could go all the way back, or what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up another scene here, and we'll just have a look at a little demo I've prepared. So you can see it's a very similar setup again. This box is my two-handed shape. And if I move that around, at the moment that one's detached, so let me find a point where they're both there. They move around and both of the hands control, other way around. The box controls where both the hands are. So it's got that two-handed lift thing going on, which is really cool. What I've done this time though is in between essentially the constraint, I've added some controllers. And what these are just add that little buffer that gives me another thing to animate, right? And at this point is essentially I'm just using this as a locator for where the hands attach. And what that gives me is the ability to keep the wrist still be the constrained one, but it's constrained to this instead, which is pretty much my placement. So that can be kind of animated freely. And what that lets me do is animate it during the animation. So we'll see at this point here where the hand comes off, I animate that ring and it comes down to the bottom. So when that blend parent occurs again, it's attached to that point. And the way I get those little rings to follow my cube is pretty simple in this case. You could do a constraint again, but I've actually just parented them in. So it's just right and left control just goes straight into here. And that means that wherever this cube goes, they go with it. So this is really powerful because you can see here, I can have him lift up. I can then move that controller. If you watch this ring here, it slides down. And during this point where the hand is moving and the controller is moving, this is unparented, right? You can see here 0 on the blend parent. And that means when it attaches again, we can go straight into that point. It's attached. Now we can move this cube around and things look awesome because they really look solid, right? It keeps that exact motion that we kind of need. And this is going to come up, I guess, more frequently than you'd think. If you're having objects like this, you want to be able to move them around and, grab different parts of it as we go through. Hopefully that kind of makes sense, and good luck.